Tell us how someone gets banned from the Queen Mary.
Rented out Queen Mary. They don't do like rent outs like that at the time. So I had convinced them it was a wedding, and this party was absolutely insane. The Queen Mary was completely, thing almost got shipwrecked. The guy that I convinced, when he came in and saw that it wasn't a wedding, the look of disappointment on his face to me was so sad. So they put me on a very serious ban list.
You're working for DJ AM. He's with Travis Barker on his Lear 35A jet. The jet crashes.
I had stopped working for them 5 months prior. The plane went off the runway. It was a very rough situation.
Welcome to In Search of Excellence, where I get to meet some of the most successful, iconic, and interesting people in the entire world. Today, my guest is one of my closest friends, Don Terzian, who's the co-founder and runs the H.Wood Group, which owns 11 incredibly successful and iconic nightclubs and restaurants around the world, including Bootsy Bellows, The Nice Guy, Delilah's, and they have 6 more they're building on the horizon. John, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Welcome to In Search of Excellence.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I always start my podcast with our family because our family helps shape our values, our personality, and our future. Your dad, Dick, was a lawyer who represented the city of Malibu, among other things. Your mom, Katy, was a school teacher. What was it like growing up in Westwood, and how did your family influence your future?
Yeah, I grew up in it's funny, I was like, didn't realize it till later, but I was kind of like the black sheep of the family. My mom's a teacher, music teacher, and 4th grade teacher my whole life. My dad's an attorney, loves the law. That's why I ended up going to law school. My brother's a diehard lawyer. And so, I think the whole life, I was the only one that was a little different. I was an artist, I was in sports, things like that. But they really shaped me because at the very end of the day, the best people, they're the absolute best people. And that was the only thing they asked of me, was to be a good human. So that's something that it's really like stuck with me and kind of who I want around me as well.
I mean, I've met your parents several times at our charity event. They're incredibly proud of you, and it's fun to just see them cavelling, if I can use a Jewish word, or that's my son up there. Look at what he's done in his life.
Yeah. Well, they thought I was, look, it's nice that now they thought I was insane when I got out of law school and didn't pass the bar. I went to work for a DJ, so they at that time thought I was absolutely out of my mind and thought I was going nowhere. So I think it's good now that they're like, they can be proud of me.
You're a very cool guy. You make fun of me that I'm not that cool, and I'm not that cool. But when you were,
I appreciate your non-coolness. I think it's a good aspect. It's a good attribute.
Why is that a good attribute?
I think it's better to be that way. You're just natural.
It's funny because you'll make fun of me that I'm out past 10 o'clock at night, which I do on occasion.
Every so often you take it.
I take it.
You take it late night.
Yeah, when Madison gets all dressed up. And then we've been to nightclubs in Vegas. We've been to some of your places, and I'm in there for half an hour, and it's like, why do you want to go home if I got all dressed up and we're here for the night? So
I think it's amazing.
I'll take it now. What were you like between ages 3 through 10?
I don't think I've ever really changed who I am, which is pretty interesting in the sense I've kind of always been the same way. I'm interested in what I think, why I think whatever success I've had in hospitality, I think has to do with my natural liking of a lot of different things. I have a love of art and a love of sports and love of history. Like I'm in like different pockets of like life, and I've been that way since I was a little kid. And so I think my thing was always, even when I was a little kid, I remember even at like 6 and 7, I was always the one to bring everyone together. So if it was my family, I was the one to make them all laugh. I was the one doing skits. I was the one, and then that went into elementary school and high school. Like my house and what I did was always the glue of everyone around me, my friends and family. It was like my thing was always like being kind of like the center of bringing everyone together, and that's kind of always how I've been,
At some point, you picked up a football.
Yep.
And you must have been pretty good at football because you started for a very competitive high school in LA. Why don't you tell us about when the first time you picked up a ball?
Well, I played, basketball was my main sport my whole life, and I absolutely loved it and lived and breathed it. And then, one day I was like, I want to try, in flag or whatever it was. I can't remember. I think 7th grade. And while I don't have the speed, I had a good arm. I just was naturally able to do it, which a lot of people, I guess, aren't. And I ended up going into it and loving it, and so played at Harvard Westlake. And I think it really shaped a lot of what I do because of, as a quarterback. And at the end of the day, it's very, the skill set for that has to do a lot with being a leader in business and life. And then I went on and was a walk-on on the USC team, right. As a quarterback, as like sixth string. But
right. We'll get to that in a minute, but what did you do to train to become a quarterback? I mean, I have a great arm as well. I can throw a professional ball 50 yards with tight spiral with some heat. I could have never played because I couldn't take a hit and I wasn't that athletic and I was very thin. I mean, you're small for a quarterback as well, and you were playing at a major high school.
One thing I did, I have an insane work ethic, much like you, from what I know, and I had that at a young age, and I didn't know how. I mean, I'm a crazy work ethic, and I was doing morning trainings and weekend trainings and like everything, under the sun of what it would take to be a quarterback. And I didn't have that in my family. No one was in sports. No one was in that really. So it was really me learning that and just working my ass off.
So you went to USC on an art scholarship, but you didn't take the art scholarship, and as you said, you were a walk-on to the football team.
I was going to go to Michigan. I got an art scholarship to Michigan.
Man, you made the wrong choice.
I accepted. I went to Michigan, and it was. I know you're a Michigan guy. My entire life, I grew up on the Fab Five, and I was obsessed with going to Michigan because my whole family went to USC. I was like, I had to do something opposite, and I just love Michigan. And I go to Michigan, it was good. It was fine. I was going to do it, and I was going to do art there. I was going to give up football because the only ones that were really interested in me in football were very small schools. So I had to make a decision if I'm going to go on to be football or if I'm going to go on to have a normal college career. And so that's what I decided to do. And, art still is my passion, so I was like, okay, I'll do that. And then I had a friend was a little older than me, or a year older, and was like, come down to a party at SC. And I went to USC, and I called my parents, and I'm like, I don't know why anyone would not go to this school. I'm not going to Michigan. And they were like, well, you've already accepted. I'm like, because I had applied to like 5 schools, and USC was one of them. And I had gotten in, and I was like, this is the only school I'm going to. So went to USC, and I wasn't on the football team or anything, but I get a call midway through my like freshman year from the coach. I thought it was a prank call, to be honest, but the coach at the time, Hackett was his name. And they wanted the starting tight end for me was the star of the country in high school, Alex Holmes.
Yeah, Alex, yeah.
And they wanted him so bad, and he said he'll only go if I walk on. So I was like, look, I'll take it. So I walked on, and I mean, it was grueling. I was the lowest totem pole, but it was really good. I have to say, looking back on it, it's amazing. But it's 5 a.m. workouts every day, then practice, then class, then practice and film. Like, I mean, it was intense, And you don't get a red shirt when you're as low totem pole. So I mean, you get annihilated.
Great student. I think you had a 3.7 GPA at USC.
Yeah.
And one of your roles there was to help recruit the players.
Yep.
So tell us, hey, John, this is Coach Hackett. We got some guys coming in. We'd like you to take them out to restaurants and nightclubs.
No, yeah, it didn't exactly look like that, but it like morphed into that, which is interesting because I do credit almost everything that I'm doing today with stemming from that, actually, because basically the coaches started to recognize that this like 5th string football player who was never going to play in the actual game, I was friends with all the players. Like, I was hanging out with them, and they were like, you have a good, like, you're from LA, you kind of know the thing where you get along with all the players, and we're in the hunt on recruiting. Why don't you take out, I can't remember at the time, the first person, take this person out. He's coming in town. We really want him. And so I did, and I really got along with that family, and they were like, whatever you did was amazing. Could you do that more to me with incoming recruits? And so I did, and I ended up like really putting together a program with Alex, to be honest, Holmes, of like taking these recruits out, having like a really good time, showing them like what it's like to come to LA, USC, everyone, one of the big things is being homesick. Your kid from Georgia or Florida or whatever it might be. It's like, so they got to feel a family, and I learned that at a young age, and it really grew big. And like what I'm doing today with H.Wood, a lot of it grew out of that thing because I did that for years, and that's how that came about.
Today, the best players go for the money, right? NIL, they have Michigan paid Bryce Underwood, number one player in the country, reportedly $10 million. There are all kinds of people who got involved with that. Back then, it was different. The players could not take money. Right. And one of the things I wanted at every school, and I know this from players and coaches, the recruits would come, and part of the fun of the party was helping the recruits have sex with women. I mean, that was going on everywhere.
Yep.
Did you see any of that at USC?
I really didn't, actually. I know that's a big thing. Now, you would have parties where you'd have like girls and whatever, but I really didn't see anything as crazy as that in that regard. I think that was like a lot of like older years of things. But that was not anything that like went down with like what we were involved with. Ours was more like entertainment, fun. Like, you would take, it's funny, you would take like a restaurant that like was like dead on a, late night, and we just fill it with like the, fun people, and you're in college. So it's like, you create a little fun vibe, and that's really what it was. And more hand holding on like their family and stuff. But, back to your point on the people take the money, that is only, I have learned, because I'm pretty active in the USC NIL world. What I've learned is that goes for a certain top person, right, where be tough to tell a kid to like not take $10 million, or whatever it is. But there's only a few of that. Everything else under that, I will say this still comes down to like having the right feel and the right people, and it's not just about the money. And I've met a good amount of these kids and their families, and I think I have to say, I think it's swung back a little bit, that it's, yes, you need some aspect of the money. It can't be nothing anymore. But I do think it's more about the right fit, which gives some hope, because the NIL world's out of control.
You were throwing parties in college, and you were basically bringing people to restaurants, including celebrities. So how on earth does a kid in college know celebrities well enough to say, hey, come join us, and we're going to have a fun time at this restaurant?
Well, I didn't know, this, first of all, way back then, totally different time. There wasn't even paparazzi, and so part of something that I'm fortunate about was that I'm from LA, and a handful of my friends started to become pretty big, celebrities, acting and music and things. And so when I was doing parties and bringing people together, and they would come just because they're my natural friends, it became a thing, and so that's really how it worked then. And, at the end of the day, even to this day, like it's a natural thing. It's a genuine relationships. That's the way it works best,
So who were some of these people back then when you were in college who became celebrities and you were bringing to these parties?
I don't know if it was bringing to them, but it was more like the ones that were around were like, the Paris Hiltons of the world, and the Olsen twins, and they were all in the same, circle of friends, if you will, and so that's, Lindsay Lohan, like that. At that time, it was like everyone was around, and then you'd have a good mix of people, and like kind of went from there,
There's a concept that goes on at restaurants and nightclubs, nice restaurants and nightclubs, that restaurants will actually pay people to bring in beautiful women and models, and they eat for free. And that's a foreign concept for people who don't live in LA or New York. Was that happening? Was that part of the deal? Is you're going out and wrangling is the word that I hear lots of times, where you're a promoter and, hey, your job is to find beautiful women and bring them in and get paid for it?
Well, I was a promoter. For a lot of years. It's not so much for restaurants, for nightclubs. Nightclubs, you get paid to bring people in. For restaurants, it's pretty rare where you're paying. I don't know of anyone paying to bring people to restaurants.
But they eat for free.
A lot eat for free.
Yeah, my wife said that she never paid for a meal in New York.
A lot eat for free. That's
which is crazy. I said, gosh, that's so unfair. That's discrimination against guys
the
right
world.
there.
That's different because that would be, you know, first of all, New York is a different situation. But yeah, they would do tons of comps. You know, celebrities get comped all the time too.
Right.
You know, so that's part of it all.
Do yours pay when they come into the Nice Guy and Delilah?
Yeah, everyone
Everyone pays.
It's too hard to like. It's too hard. The nightclubs are different. The nightclubs you comp a lot of people. You have to do that to create a party.
So if Bieber's coming in a nightclub, he gets a table, he's got the alcohol, and he's not paying?
It's more about whoever is a friend of mine, you know, and that is there. You know, I think that's more of how it is, or me or my partner Brian, like one of us. If it's the right thing, then yeah, you know. But that's the nightclub world versus the restaurant world.
Tell us how someone gets banned from the Queen Mary.
How did you know that? Did I tell you that?
No.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. The Queen Mary. I think I'm still on their ban list. Pretty sad actually, because my wife one year, or one of us was like, we should take the kids there. I'm like, in my head, I was like, I don't know if we can go there.
It's like Vegas where you can't go back because they've got your photo somewhere.
The USC parties that I was doing got really big, really, really big. I grew a really big company. Actually, like I did it. Two of my best friends, Rick and Brandon, were with me on it, and we did this thing where we really grew this thing to be. It was a pretty massive company, and it ended up being passed down. And so we, you know, in the height of it, I basically rented out Queen Mary. However,
what does that cost, by the way? I mean, that's a huge. Give people a sense of. People don't know what the Queen Mary is. It's in Long Beach.
It's
right?
in Long Beach. Yeah, I don't remember
Huge.
what it was. I want to say a few $100,000 or something.
I mean, the ship must be a football field long.
Football field long, but it was an off night. It was like a Monday or something. But this is where, you know, I'll admit it, and they don't do like rent outs like that at the time. And so, especially not to a college kid, and especially not. So I had convinced them. I really like went in and convinced them a whole other story of what it was. It was a wedding, and it was like a whole thing around it. Like I did this whole thing. Like it was. Looking back on it, not something I should have done in that regard, but I really wanted to do this event there, right? So rented it out, and this party was absolutely insane. It was like one of the best events I've done.
Ever.
Like it was insane. But the place just the Queen Mary was completely, thing almost got shipwrecked, you know? And
you obliterated the Queen Mary?
And the guy that I convinced, I'll never forget the head of it, when he came in and saw that it wasn't a wedding, I mean, the look of disappointment on his face to me was so sad. I was like, oh my gosh, like I felt really bad. And so they put me on a very serious ban list. That's why.
That same night he said, man, you're done.
Oh, they took down, I mean, it was not pretty.
Did they kick everybody out that night or you couldn't? They did?
Yeah, we had thousands of people there. Because when I was doing this at the time, it was like ticketed events and things. You know, it was like a whole...
People pay to get in. And then you make a profit based on the revenues less the rental costs.
Yeah.
Were there more...
sponsors or whatever.
Sponsors. So what kind of money were you making on an event like that back in college?
You know, I don't remember on that event, but we were making good cash at the time. Like it was real.
$10,000 a party?
More. Yeah. And in college, it was great. Like,
yeah.
I was like, this is the life.
Yeah. I mean, my son, Charlie, who
I continued through law school.
Yeah. So let's talk about law school.
Wait, I want to hear what Charlie did what?
Oh, no. Charlie does a lot of things. But he is 21 now, legal. And so, he'll pay in high school, he'll pay $50 to get in. Someone rents out a house. They trash the place, by the way. So I don't know who these idiots are renting out their house. Yeah. And, Charlie says they're packed with people. So these guys are making, like you said, cash, taking cash at the door, $100 a head. He said there's 500 people there. I mean, that's $50,000.
No, and I had a whole system. I had a big event once a month, and then I had multiple small events during it. So I was making, big events, you'd make, 15, 20 grand. Small events, a few thousand, So it's crazy. And when you're in college, it's like, You
go to law school. Your dad's a lawyer. Your brother Jim is a lawyer.
Yep.
And You didn't pass the bar.
No,
Did you try?
I did twice.
You did? And what was it? You just didn't study?
No, I studied.
But it just wasn't your thing.
It's a very big thorn in my side.
Yeah, it makes you stronger.
Yeah, although I never passed. It's a hard one, you know, in that regard. No, I really did. Now, I was working, you know, I was at the time I started to work upon going on to the second bar, I started to work for the kind of the first celebrity DJ AM, and his manager Larry, and I was fortunate enough that they spotted me and took me in. They were like, you know, do your thing with us. You're great. So I was kind of like an assistant and like everything for them, like literally. And so I think on the second one and we were opening the first club called LAX.
Yeah.
I think on the second one, I was a little, ironically, when you're close enough, they send you how many points you missed. And so I was off by like 9. Like, it was crazy. First one, I clearly just didn't, you know. And then I was like, you know what, it's just not for me. I was never going to law school to be a lawyer, ever. There was a chance I wanted to be a sports agent because I worked for a sports agent. And I obviously liked that, you know, every guy loves, you know, has that dream of the sports agent world at some point, you know, type of thing. But it wasn't for me. I really went, you know, my dad was pretty serious about, he was like, the one thing I ask is you get a law degree, no matter what you do. I don't care what you do in life, have a law degree. And I'm very thankful for that because my mind is so artistic, like so off into artistic land, that law school really grounded it to speak, read, write, and think in a processed way, like tenfold. And really speaking, it does a whole thing for someone like me. And so I think that's why I'm really appreciative of that I went, even though it was not fun for me.
Right. As you know, I also went to law school, hated every minute of it, hated practice. I had probably the worst start to a career, 3 jobs in 8 months, basically told to leave. Well, once told to leave for sure, and the other move or leave. So I had a record. But me, I feel the same. Like today I learned how to think in a different way, a structured way, a very focused way that I didn't have before. But it was very painful reading every day, case law, and just like every word. I just can't stand what I'm reading and what I'm learning. But I think graduate degree is a helpful thing for a lot of people. Do you agree?
I fully agree. I think, look, to each their own. You know, I know a lot of successful that don't, but I do think it matters. I do think it helps. You see a difference. At least myself, there's a difference in level of reading, writing, thinking. You know, processing. It's definitely a big difference.
So when we work for people, crazy shit happens sometimes. You're working for DJ AM. He's with Travis Barker on his Lear 35A jet. The jet crashes.
Yeah.
When did you learn about that? And tell us about your fear of the PJ now.
Yeah, it's rough. Yeah, I mean, I had left. I had stopped working for them, for AM and them. I don't know, maybe 5 months prior, 6 months prior, and he took a different like assistant on the trip, you know, because I didn't leave his side in that regard, and the plane went off the runway, and everyone, you know, passed away in it besides Travis and AM, and really like haunting to think, you know, A, I would have been on that, you know, B, really brutally sad for the people on that passed away and their families.
People died in that? Because they didn't die though.
No, they jumped out, but it was a rough scene. It was a very rough situation, and it's been, you know, I'm better on the private jet now, only because there's I don't know, but it was a fear. I mean, I would not take one for years and years and years, and to this day, I went to therapy over flying overall. To this day, and I have to travel quite a bit, and to this day, I dread every moment of getting on a plane.
You planned my bachelor party, and we'll talk about that later for sure. That was an incredible weekend, but I remember one of the guys in the group got us a private jet, and you said, I'm not going on a private jet. So you and I sat back and coached on, I think on a Delilah Southwest flight. I'm like, and, you can see everyone piloting a private jet. Like, John's my guy, and obviously we're going together.
Sorry for that.
Don't be sorry. It was great.
I don't think I would do that today again.
The jet was too small.
They're a lot better.
They were cramped in anyway.
I will not take I mean, I sound like I can only say this because I don't own a private jet, but I would not go in a small one.
Yeah.
I go on heavy set ones only, and then I'm okay.
Right.
But I absolutely hate it.
Right.
I hate every aspect of flying.
Madison and I, we had a portfolio company. They were having a kickoff party up in San Francisco, and I couldn't make it because of the kids. I said no. So one of the guys sent us a VLJ, very light jet, Honda jet, Eclipse I think it was, and it's a 4-seater. And I just wondered if I could get into it because I'm very claustrophobic. Oh. And we get in, and the thing is decked out. It's very, very nice. So we get there, we fly into a rainstorm that was coming, okay, a little shaky on the way there. On the way back, we nearly died. We're coming into Santa Monica Airport, which is where people on the west side take off and land from. The jet was like a salt and pepper shaker. I've never seen anything like that. We're going to die. I said to Madison, we're going to die, we're going to die. She's calm as can be. You know Madison very well. And I'm dying. And then I was worried the plane was going to break apart, and the two pilots, young 30-year-old Marines, stocky, and you could see the forearms of these guys and I kept trying to talk to them. We okay, no response. And they were trying to get me. This was Jet Suite before they had you could fly commercial. They wanted you to buy into their partnership or whatever. We get to Santa Monica below the clouds, and I'm like, all right, this is so great. We're going to be fine. And there's a system on these jets where the Mayday system comes on if something wrong is happening. So we're coming down to the runway, and the lights start blinking, abort, abort, abort. And you could see this thing going like 3 feet off the runway, 4 feet off the runway. We're going to land, we're going to land on one of the buildings, the hangars. And all of a sudden, you could see these guys, again, just thrusting. You could see their muscles bulging. And we get up through the sky. We're fine. We're like, that was the craziest shit. That was probably the closest I've come in my entire life to dying. We land at Burbank. And we're like, okay, so we got to get a Uber back to Santa Monica. Our car's there. It's like 1 a.m. The guy picks us up in the Uber, and he has 3 teardrops coming right out of the eye, tattoos. And for those people who don't know what that is, those are kills. Those are gang guys. If you have a teardrop, that's a kill. So we're driving back with some guy with 3 teardrops, and I'm saying to Madison, I'm like, so we pretended to get on the phone with someone fake and said, oh yeah, we're getting picked up. Yeah, this driver, he's cool. His name is Miguel, whatever. And, we're in this car, and it's like, yeah, the ride's easy. We kept the phone open the whole time.
I bet you won't fly a small plane again.
No, I'll never get in that plane again.
That's the thing.
Yeah. Some of our friends have planes, and it's nice. We ride a couple of times. I don't like taking things from people. I feel obligated. Yeah. So we'll fly coach sometimes when people ask. But the private jet is the ultimate luxury.
Totally agree.
LAX, you don't own it. You work there, and you mop floors. One of the things today that I think a lot of our generation, they don't like doing the shit work. No. How important was doing the shit work, like mopping floors, to your career?
I think it was the make or break for me. I have to say, and I hate to. You're right, and I hate to sound like the old guy, but I have noticed the generational issue where it's like they're skipping so many steps. But yeah, I mopped the floors. I counted the cash. I made sure the repair and maintenance. I made sure the promotions were good. Like it was like all of the above. It doesn't happen anymore at all. And like I don't. Where I think the issue is, my theory always is, you could drop me in the middle of a foreign town, and I'm gonna figure it out with my business. I'll figure out with a restaurant. I'll figure out whatever, because I had that background. I think where a lot of the new generation, I won't say everyone, is they're skipping that major step of learning the building blocks and learning the work ethic that goes into it. And who knows? We'll see what happens and shakes out from it.
All of your venues have people who work in the bathroom full time. Most of your venues, the nicer ones, you got people who work full time in the bathroom. They're dressed nicely. They have the mints there and the toothpicks and whatever else. They have tip jars there. Yep. And I like taking surveys in my head and just counting, what percentage of people are leaving tips for men and women who work in the bathroom. I mean, if you think about this, like if the bathrooms are smelly, the people are drunk, the guys are sometimes peeing on the floor, they got to clean it up. I always make sure to tip everyone $20 in whatever venue that I go into, and it makes me mad that everyone just ignores them, basically.
I know, I agree.
How hard are those jobs to fill? How many people are applying to work full time in one of your bathrooms?
I think we use outside services now on making sure to find that, because it's not easy to find staff. It's not easy at all. So it's good that you do that, because not enough people are like treating people well like that. It's crazy.
I mean, they love me because I'm the biggest tip in the jar, and then when I come back to the bathroom, we had a few beers or whatever. It's like, they're your best friend.
Yeah.
At our charity event, that we had at your venue, and we'll talk about that. $100. Just to make up for it, because people are just not tipping. Like, that's our event. We invited people there.
Yeah.
And it's like,
No, you gotta take care of people that are working. I always really try to my big thing is always like bussers. They're the ones killing themselves.
Yeah.
When you look at a busser and everyone's kind of ignoring them. So it's always really good to pay attention to those jobs in these places.
So let's talk about the bussers. I was a waiter in college and in law school. Chi-Chi's.
Chi-Chi's.
The Olive Garden.
Oh, it was an Olive? Oh.
No, both.
Both.
All
right.
We split.
Chi-Chi's and Olive Garden.
Yeah, Chi-Chi's had a little tight with shirt, Spanish style with little frills on the arms. It was not the most masculine thing.
I like it though.
Yeah, good experience. You really learn the customer service business when you're a waiter.
Yeah.
Tell us how the split works. So you get a tip. Talk about the restaurant split and then the bottle girl split in terms of who gets what. Do the waiters have to give to the busboy, give to the tip jar, to the general staff?
Well, so one thing's very important. We cannot get involved in tips as an owner. So
Okay.
We have to be very careful on that. That's number one. Number two, you're referring to, so when you're saying bottle girls, that's that's nightclubs.
The nightclubs, but
So
restaurant, like when I was a waiter,
yeah.
I had to give a certain amount to, I forget what percent of my tips, and then that was split between the busboys,
Yeah.
who don't get tips,
Right.
and that was a big part of their comp.
So we do pooling, and so the pool will decide on what they're going to tip out to bussers and whatever. It honestly varies. It varies everywhere. The bartenders sometimes have their own tip pool, so it can vary. But we have to stay very careful about not being involved in the tip process
Because
California law. So, but yeah, that's how it goes. And we do it. We're a house tip pool.
let's talk about your first club that you actually raised money for, the Stork, next to a mall.
Yeah. Well, attached to a mall.
Yeah, attached to a mall.
Yeah.
2-story building, Warhol windows.
Well, I put those in.
You put in the Warhol windows.
Yeah, it was an old. It was an old Carl's Jr. at the side of Hollywood and Highlands. I have no idea what I was thinking. I was just a complete moron, But I had a vision. I think I was a little ahead of my time with it, because what I built there is really what I'm doing today with places. But it was like an old Carl's Jr. It was like a bad space to take, and then we rebuilt it all, and I went super, had Warhol windows shipped in.
What does that mean, a Warhol window?
I'm a big, I'm obviously big into art and furniture and stuff, and so I'm a big vintage shopper, right, sourcer. And the Warhol's factory was up for auction, the factory that he did all his art in New York. And so there was a way to get the windows, which were like gorgeous. These gorgeous windows that did not get made today, and like crazy.
Colored glass.
like a slightly frosted glass, like, you know, stuff that doesn't get made. It was like really cool, and shipped them from, you know, New York, and did a bunch of things like that, right? And built this insane, I think it was like 14,000 square feet, 2-story, called it the Stork, which was you know, I've always had a love of history and historical old school places. The Stork Supper Club in New York was like one of the cool old places. And so that was, you know, we raised money from friends and family, and launched it. And it was my first thing. But I went a little too hardcore. Like, you know, you had to recite a poem to get in the door. You had to do.
Well, let's talk about the tea room separately, because that was separate, right, from the Stork?
No, tea room came later.
But I thought the poem was for the tea room.
No, it was for in Stork.
Okay, so that's sort of nuts.
Yeah, it was nuts.
So
It was pretty cool.
it's very cool. I mean, it's very different.
Very different.
So how old are you at this point when you open the Stork?
I was 27, I think, 28. It was 2007 it opened, so yeah.
And you raised $2 to $3 million for it?
Yeah. And
Who'd you go to? I mean, your parents, right?
parents, friends, and family, you know, and it was a great learning lesson. Unfortunately, didn't work out, but we built everything off of it, you know. We were always able to bring good crowds. So we brought such big crowds that it actually ended up becoming a public nuisance. But the tea room that you're talking about, the tea room was actually a pretty cool story, and what I think I learned from that is what we ended up kind of building off of with H.Wood.
Can we just go back before we get into the tea room for
Sure.
1 second? Who did you go to raise money at 27-year-old, first time raising a lot of money like that? And then how did you convince people to invest?
Well, I went to, you know, I had a pretty great network, you know, fortunately, thanks to Harvard Westlake, USC, Pepperdine Law School, you know, family and friends. I had a good network. You know, I think everyone, whether they be hard pressed to find someone to not say that I'm extremely above board. And so I think that's always really important for an investor. So even at a young age, and I think it was good that I had gone to law school, because at least I had some under me. But I think even at a young age with zero credibility for owning a place, the one thing was having that, you know, people knew that I've never done a drug in my life. You know, I'm not into it for, you know, anything other than business, and being above board, you know. And we didn't, you know, I didn't take a salary that whole time. Oh, Stork. I mean, I lived at home with my parents, you know. So I did stuff that people wouldn't do. You can't predict success or failure, but you can behave in a way that makes people, you know, trust you and know that, you know, you're in it for the right reasons. And that's how I was. That's how I am to this day, you know. And we had like 30 investors, literally 30 or 40 investors, like a public offering.
So $25,000, $50,000 checks?
25 up to like 150, I think was what it was, yeah.
So tell us about Samir in the tea room.
So the tea room, I wish I still had it. Very special place. Basically what we realized was, at the time, we changed the name from Stork to H.Wood. And it was this big place. It was a restaurant, nightclub, lounge, everything. And one thing that we did have going for us is we were always bringing, at the time, the paparazzi world was getting big, and we were bringing big, like, friends that were becoming pretty big celebrities, and they needed a place to like have a privacy. So we had this dead space. It was legitimately a storage closet. It was like the size of, it was, I think, 1,000 square feet, which is very small. And I had my friend from high school, Samir, who had come to me about his family was big in the tea world. And he had this idea about, and this is all at the same time, he had this idea about doing tea-infused liquor and making it like healthy and wellness and, you know, kind of all the above. So we had this idea of like putting together this like kind of like interesting idea where it's like, it's called the tea room. So it's like people feel kind of good saying they're going to the tea room even though they're going to a bar, and making it like the most exclusive place. like by a landslide, since it's small and like off to the side. And that's what we ended up doing. And it became literally the biggest hit in LA. That was the place that everyone.
Wasn't Katy Perry coming in the tea room, and that helped? People knew she was coming there, so that helped sort of put you on the map?
Yeah, she was a massive supporter. Stuff like that made a massive difference. And we had a handful of those that would come and be there, and it was just, honestly, it's a good little vibe. And the DJ was on a piano, so it was like a fun, different thing. It was cool. It wasn't stuffy when you got it. Like when you were able to get in, it was just like, you had gotten in, and it was like a good little vibe.
We'll talk about why it shut down in a minute, but store shut down, and then you reopened it a few months later as H.Wood, correct?
Yep.
So now let's talk about you being harassed by the police.
Yep.
Them picking you up, driving you around, dropping you off in the middle of nowhere. Crooked cops.
Yeah, they were. They would come in and arrest me, handcuff me. They took my partner. They took Brian to jail. Handcuffed, took him in.
He was put in a cell by himself.
Yeah, they would handcuff me and drive me around. They were wanting a payoff because I think Vice was getting paid off by everyone else.
$5K a month was the going rate back then.
Something like that. And there was, in my head at one point, I was like, man, do I just, what do I do? But it goes back to how you're raised. My dad and mom are so above board, and thank God that's how I was raised, because you can't ever go back when you change that way. So I stayed super firm, and look, I lost the battle because they ended up getting us shut down. But thank God I never paid anyone off, and thank God I never did, because they turned out to be crooked cops. They got caught. The main sergeant, got caught years later on taking bribes and whatever, but unfortunately he had, done his thing with us and run us out, and I'll never forget, we went to court on this public nuisance, and I will never forget sitting there. The entire LAPD force came in to testify. It's crazy. It was so sketchy.
The police brotherhood.
And what's crazy, and so now, and ironically, I'm so active for the LAPD now, and they're amazing. I'm on, I help with the LAPF, and I think it was just a bad, sergeant, bad cop, honestly. It's a bad little section.
It's crazy.
And they're all out.
Well, it's crazy that they took these bribes for a long period of time and they didn't get fired.
Well, they got fired I think they got fired in the end, years later. I'm not sure what ended up happening, but pretty sure got fired or went on whatever. But it's crazy, and it's like they don't teach you that stuff. And when you're coming out, it's like they don't teach you how to handle that. Very scary getting handcuffed and driven around. Very scary.
I've been handcuffed before in a police car. It's crazy, and I'll tell a story here. The first time. There may or may not have been a second time, but I had a girlfriend who lived in Brentwood. I lived in Brentwood, and I was on the enter list. And I had a key. I left my key at home, and she, we were in a fight, and then she texted me, "Okay, come on over." So it's like 12 o'clock at night, and I go over there in my big Detroit Red Wings hoodie and my sweatpants. I've got slippers on, and her roommate hated me because when you have a boyfriend as a roommate and the boyfriend it takes over, then you're blowing off your roommate, so they're no longer friends. So she really despised me. Yeah. And so my girlfriend at the time was drunk and had taken some NyQuil. Nice. So I get in, because they let me in, I'm on the list, and I get in there and I'm knocking on the wall, and I'm saying, "Hey, and I'm not going to mention her name, but I said, hey, and I'm knocking on the door. I'll tell you when we're done shooting. And I'm knocking on the door, and I'm like, "Hey, let me in." And I'm standing out there for maybe 5 minutes. And the next thing I know, elevator opens, and have you ever had a gun pointed at you with one of the red lights circling your chest?
No.
So these three people come out of the elevator. They're shouting on me, get down, get down, get down. And there's a red dot circling on me. I'm all, down now, down now. They come up and they basically push me onto the floor, knee in the back, handcuffs behind the back. I'm thinking, oh my God, like, this is fucking nuts. Wow. What's going on here? And I saw my whole career flash in front of me, right? Like, I'm this successful businessman. I think I have a good reputation. And I'm on the floor with a knee in my back like I'm a perp. And the guy stands me up, leans me on the wall. They frisk you,
Yeah.
right? And then he said, you know, what are you doing here? I was invited. My girlfriend lives there. When? I said, I have a BlackBerry. You know, let me get it. They're like, I'll reach it from your pocket. And there was some code when you call in breaking and entering.
Yeah.
There's some code that goes out on the radio, and these cops will put the sirens on, 100 miles per hour. You get where you're going. Someone could get murdered right now, and you know they blow through stoplights. They put themselves at risk, and their adrenaline's pumping when they see someone standing outside someone's place. And so I said, "Let me get out the BlackBerry." And so I said, "No." He'll put it out, turn it on. I still have the cuffs on, and I had to turn it on and give the guy the code, the password, and then he said, "Uncuff him." Because I said, hey, come on over. And the cops were fucking irate. Absolutely irate. And I said to the cops, you should arrest the girlfriend. And by the way, to this day, the police report is still there. Like you can't waive it from your record. Huh? It's they told me, no one would ever find this. And
That's
then
really
I get deposed one day.
Oh
and,
my gosh.
Here we go. Here you go. But I did something very smart, by the way. And again, we'll talk about preparation and how that's a key part of my success. I thought about in the future. I said, all right, not going to marry this girl. I got to get something in writing.
Yeah.
So I had her write a letter to the police.
Yeah.
This was completely unfair. It never happened. It never should have been. And then I had notarized. Right, just thinking ahead. Not that I'm going to run for office. That would never happen. But I thought, hey, gotta
never know. Speaking
no,
career, you never know.
I know. I definitely know. So you have a lot of failures.
Yeah.
And you're 27 years old. Yeah. You're penniless.
Yeah.
And you move back into your parents' house in your childhood bedroom.
Yeah.
Tough time.
It was a low time.
We've all been there. What were you thinking when? Can you remember the day where you actually were moving back in and you got your suitcases or boxes sort of sitting on your bed that night?
Yeah, I mean, I do remember moving back in, and I do remember, it's so weird because I think I have like almost sometimes an unhealthy optimism, but it's gotten me through life. So I can't knock it because I think most people at the time would be so depressed. And I was more the opposite. I was more like, I'm going to work harder. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z better. I'm going to, it's like a crazy fire under me, I had no time. I remember my parents one time were like, okay, what are you going to do now? I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, you want to go, figure out job wise? I'm like, no, I'm doing this. And they're like, literally nothing. Like, so it was a low time. However, I really put a lot of fire under myself. That's how I get through things.
How important is failure and resilience to our future success?
It'd be hard pressed to find not failing to be successful. I don't know how it happens, because you almost have to, and it's unfortunate because I'm sure there's people that are very successful that had no failures, but I don't know. I mean, it's crazy because you need that drive. I always say that I work like Kobe played, where it's like I always have to have some sort of like anger in me, and I don't mean that in like an actual way. I mean it like I'm like driven to like I gotta like win. I gotta have it be the best. And if you don't have that failure under you, I'm very thankful that knock on wood, my big failures were early, but you never know. We have failures along the way. Constantly, and it's just all how you take it and pivot and react.
And we have to take a step back sometimes to take a step forward. So the next job you got was at the Beverly as a promoter. So you no longer own a club. No. You're back to a promoter, so you're taking a massive step back. You're getting paid to bring people in to the Truesdale. So tell us about, to the Beverly, and then tell us about Guy Starkman, the relationship there, and then how that basically turned back to where you wanted to go.
Yeah, it's like, you never know where life's going to take you. So I'm really big on relationships and kind of like just believing in letting things like come as they do good work and see how things play out. And so my partner Brian, who we started H.Wood together in Stork, he was always really close with Guy Starkman, and Guy was like an older version of us. He had Jerry's Deli, his family was Jerry's Deli, and he had Truesdale nightclub, and then he had turned his one nightclub called Guy's into the Beverly. And Brian was like, we lost H.Wood, we lost all of our clubs. He's like, I'm either going to go back to business school and I'm like, you can't. Like, we have to. We'll rebuild. We'll figure something out. And he got us. Guy was like, I'm opening this. Why don't you come like really be a major part of it? So me and Brian went and did that, opened it, and were promoters for it. Which I absolutely hated that, going back to that. However, I embraced it, and both of us, and we did a good job. And luckily, we stayed close with him, and luckily, he came to us one day and he had another club, and he was like, if you guys could raise some money, why don't you, I don't care anymore about this. He's like, why don't you buy Truesdale for me? So we did. We raised some money, and
$2 million.
I don't remember what the total was at the time, but around that. Yeah, around $2 million.
$1 million, I think, went to Guy, and another $1 million went to build out the club.
I don't remember exactly the thing, but whatever it was probably around that. But we bought it, and we had this idea. I had mutual friends with David Arquette, who was just coming off of Beecher's Madhouse, and he had this whole idea that I loved to do this experiential nightclub world, which was really innovative at the time. And I love the fact that all of our big friends and family and clients were all in that West Hollywood area, so we could really capitalize. And so that spot ended up becoming Bootsy Bellows, which was a wild success. And we named it after his mom. His mom was a pinup girl in the 60s, and her name was Bootsy Bellows. So we had this whole thing where puppets walking around and burlesque girls, and it was just a fun, very interactive nightclub. And it was really that got us back on our path, and we were like, we can really do this. That's from there. And so thank God, for Guy and taking a step back, as you said, because had I had too big of an ego and said, no, I'm not going to go be a promoter, I would have never really been in that position. I wouldn't be here today.
One of the biggest mistakes for people in the workforce when things aren't working out or they're not happy is they're not willing to take a step back to move forward. I think it's absolutely crazy.
It is crazy, but you have to learn how to do it.
Suck it up.
You have to learn how to do it and not hold on.
A lot of our success, cool things happen at specific moments. July 5th, 2012, Katy Perry's movie comes out that night, and she brought everyone back in a van to Bootsy Bellows. I think it was your first night opening, so she had Justin Bieber in the van. Big night for you.
Yeah, that was a big night. That was a good night.
You weren't expecting her to come that night and bring all these cool people?
No, but she's she's one of the greatest supporters to us. So that's a good one. But yeah, that stuff like that really catapulted us.
That I am responsible for almost burning down Bootsy Bellows and Katy Perry saving Bootsy Bellows from burning to the ground.
Why? I don't know about this.
So the story was, I'm single, and it's really awesome for a not that cool guy like me to have friends like you that are cool. And I remember said, hey, Randy, what are you up to tonight? And I said, I've got this date with this girl. It's a first date. He said, why don't you come by? Katy Perry is having a private party for this guy, Faraz, who she just signed. He's a piano player, is going to be the next Sam Smith. I'm like, no, I'm not sure. He said, come on by. So went to Boa Steakhouse across the street, and then I went to Bootsy Bellows. You want to go there, want to go there. And Bootsy Bellows had a second room in the back. For those people who don't know, there's a piano there, and beautiful booths, and we had one right next to the piano, and there were these little votive candles. And at some point I'm sitting there talking to this first date, and it starts smoking, and there's smoke coming up everywhere, and she had this beautiful white leather jacket that actually caught on fire. Like there were flames there. And Katy Perry comes over and noticed it and takes the jacket that was burning and starts slapping the votive candle like this, and it was a crazy story. The story gets a little, I saved you. The story gets a little crazier.
Sounds like Katy saved us.
Yeah, Katy saved you. Yeah, it was my fault.
Yes, yes.
You
were the arson.
Very unresponsible
Katy
guest. The story gets a little crazy, by the way, and I'm going to divert this for a little bit because it comes back to Katy. I went back to her apartment that night, and she had all these nice clothes, and she just moved to Los Angeles. She was a model. Her dad was a police officer up north. Her mom was a hairdresser who was cutting hair in a small town for $12 a haircut. And so she had moved here, and she had only been here for 2 months. She had all these nice things, Barney's bags in the closet. And I later learned that she was, and this happens in LA, I didn't know this thing was a thing, but I found out that a wealthy man was paying her a certain amount of money a year to give her a car and clothing allowance. And then he can, you've heard these stories. I didn't know this even existed, right? This was in the movies. And so.
This was your first date?
This was our first date.
How'd you meet her?
On Facebook. She wrote, and by the way, my wife knows the story. She thinks I was creepy. By the way, when I was single, people would set you up on these blind dates. Oh, she's beautiful, whatever. And then you get there, and it was like false advertising sometimes. And so you go to Facebook, and 30 pictures don't lie. And so this woman had posted, I'd friended her weeks out and said, who's going to Vegas this weekend? I had no plans on going to Vegas, but I said, hey, I may be there. And so that started the conversation, and then, et cetera, et cetera. So I learned of this relationship. I'm like, okay, this is absolutely nuts. We're done. Okay. The Grammys, as you know, has this charity function the night before. Yeah. And where all the people who are playing at the Grammys play. So I was invited. I went. And everyone was there. Bruce Springsteen was the main guy. He played 7 songs, but everyone. Neil Young, Katy played, and I saw Katy, who was sitting, 2 tables away, and I love Katy Perry, and I wanted to go take a picture and say, hey, Katy, I'm Randy. I met you with John. Yeah. She didn't know who I was, but yeah. And I said, do you remember the fire and you slapping down the jacket? And she said, yeah. And she said, you still dating her? And I said, no. And I just gave her the one-liner, and she said, what a fucking bitch. Like, great. So that was the last time I saw Katy.
I like that.
There you go. So I'm glad I didn't burn down your van. Actually, I'm glad I'm not responsible for burning down Bootsy Bellows.
Very glad. Thank God.
So Bootsy's a hit, and right around the time that, little later, you had a concept for a West Side venue at a hotel. I'm not sure how much you want to get into this, but someone stole the concept. It became massively successful, and the guy told you, you're going to be a no one, so I'm going to take advantage of you.
Yeah.
What happened? What can you say publicly, and then how did that motivate you and say, hey, screw you, I am going to be somebody, and we'll see what happens?
Yeah, I won't name names, but yeah, we created a whole really cool concept that and this is actually right before Bootsy Bellows.
They were kind of
same time.
Yeah.
Since I long time West Side, and I knew that like there needed to be some sort of new nightlife in the West Side. I'd grown up there, and my family's all Santa Monica, and all that. So I was like, there's got to be something there. So my company team and I had created this like really cool concept to do at a hotel. They stole it, and really like wrote me a, I don't know, 10 grand check or something, which to me was a big deal to like, I couldn't not take to like not sue them, right? So I was so angry that, I went and convinced, I went and found another bar next to Giorgio's. I started to go in there.
Total shithole.
Total shit.
Called the Hideout.
Called the Hideout, yeah. I took my wife on our first date was basically there at Giorgio's, and I was like, I want to see this place next door. So we went in there, and she was like, there's literally holes in the wall. Like it was absolutely crazy. Flies on like the bar and stuff. It was pretty bad. But I had convinced, it had been dilapidated, and fortunately I had waited around long enough for weeks, and I had convinced the owner to give me a shot. And I think the way I convinced him was I said, I told him the story of how I'd gotten screwed. And I said, I'm so hungry. I'm going to literally anything. My entire life is going to live and breathe this place. Like I'm going to crush it. And so he was like, okay, it's yours. And he gave me $100 grand to redo it, which is insane that I redid the place for $100 grand. And turned into what I called Shore Bar. Had a hybrid model where there was a members room up top. Everyone had a locker. It was a whole touch and feel thing, and became a massive hit. Massive hit. It really was like the West Side nightlife. And so, we as of last year we don't have it anymore. But it was a 12-year run, long time for a bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You made me cool because I got the membership.
Yeah.
It was packed. There were lines out front. I'd just be like, oh, yeah, Randy, yeah, you're a member. Oh, yeah. I mean, they all knew that we were really good friends.
Yeah.
And so there was a second level where that was really cool. There were lounges. I mean, downstairs there are a couple of booths, stand-up tables, and then there was a big lounge upstairs where you had your own bartender. So
yeah, I mean, it's funny, that model to this day is what I see what works is that very deep touch where it's like, you have that, people want to have that extra level of care. And so that really worked there.
Welcome to part one of my incredible interview with one of my closest friends, John Terzian, who's the founder of the H.Wood Group, which owns 11 of the most successful nightclub and restaurant venues around the world. Stay tuned for some of the craziest customer service stories you've ever heard in your life.